Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Broken Binding interview. My guest this evening is C.L. Clarke. We're here to talk about Fortune's Wake, the new novella that's published today from Grimdark Magazine. How are you doing, Sheree? There it is.
Doing
Look,
really
there
well.
it is. You see
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I've got. This is the art copy, and so this is the final copy. A little size difference, but very excited.
Amazing, amazing. So we'll get into that in a bit, but I want to go back to your origin story and talk about things that influenced you. And I always forget to do this one thing. So as well as like books and authors that influenced you, what about like TV shows and comics and games? Because there's certain video games now that are like so amazing. They're fantastic. So what were you into as a kid?
As a kid, oh man. I mean, I was into Pokemon as a kid, actually. I really don't know if there is a particular traceable thing from my childhood as a Pokemaster, but I do remember the Pokemon movie, and I remember how the end of it made me cry a lot with that like brother song. And there is still a part of me that really loves the Civil War style battle. So that one was about like Pokemon fighting their twin Pokemon. But also like Civil War as in like the Marvel Civil War. Like I love it when the team fractures and fights each other. And I do actually have a couple stories in my mental pipeline and maybe my publishing pipeline that do that kind of thing.
Okay.
And I really think that for someone who loved Pokemon as much as I did, I do not have enough small animal companions. And I think Fortune's Wake might actually be the first time I have an animal companion.
And you're hunting monsters, and Kova's hunting monsters, so it all ties together. It's all
totally. It's right there. It's right there.
It's right there. It's on the cover.
Yeah. But also, I got into Lord of the Rings. I think the first movie came out when I was, I had to be in like middle school or something like that.
Right.
And then the Sword in the Stone, the Disney Sword in the Stone was definitely influential. That doomed romance, the doomed squirrel romance, that you can see that in all of my books. Absolutely.
I've heard you talk about Dragonlance. I think that doesn't get nearly enough credit. And I also think Weiss and Hickman aren't talked about nearly enough because
they're back in the game.
But I haven't. They've been doing bits and pieces for years, like lots of game stuff and books and stuff. But like back in the 80s, because I was reading in the 80s, they had queer characters in one of their books, Rose of the Prophet, the trilogy. That's the first time like I read it. They did like a Portal Fantasy. They did Dragonlance. They'd like all these different series and like just Deathgate cycles, 7 books. Who does a 7-book series with like Portal Magic Fantasy? No one. So they were way ahead of their time, and that's like 40 years ago now. So I think they're amazing. But Dragonlance, I heard you talk about that, and Kit.
Yeah, Kitiara was
we all had a crush on her. I mean, who didn't?
Oh yes, I didn't even know that was cool. That was a crush, but that was probably one of my first book crushes.
Yeah.
But yeah, now I just like to write bad women who are less queer coded and just straight up queer. But yeah. So I actually wrote an essay about butch chivalry, and that was on Tor.com Reactor now. But I mentioned Sturm Brightblade as one of those sort of paladin archetype examples as we were moving from actual medieval chivalry to fantasy chivalry. And so I think about him a lot as well, and how I feel like a lot of my characters are trying to straddle, like they want to be Sturm Brightblade, but their deeper inner desires lead them to being a bit more of a gray Kitiara type character. So
yeah, it was such a diverse kind of cast of characters that were so different. Like there's something in there, I think, for everybody. With the whether we had like a disabled character like Raisling Magia, who's just so deeply flawed and damaged
Oh
goods.
yeah.
Like he was so cool. He was just the coolest. He was so dangerous and so bad, but yeah, he's just so cool. To like people who come from two different places, like Tanis Half-Elven, and just that was my absolute jam growing up. It was what called to me so much for sure. I've heard you talk about the Traitor Baru Cormorant. Now, so I haven't read this, but I heard that basically you said reading it changed your writing brain. Can you say what it was without spoiling it that made you go, the fuck?
Well, the first thing that made me go, the fuck, was that I thought that I could no longer write the Unbroken because I'd written the draft of the Unbroken, and then I started reading the first chapter of Baru, and I felt like someone had already gotten to my idea first.
Oh no.
And I even showed it to my advisor, and my advisor had read my novel already, and he was reading that first couple pages, and he just kind of looked up at me with this, oh no, face. And that's not the look you want to see when you've gone to someone for comfort and reassurance.
Tell me it's gonna be okay.
But obviously it all worked out because I was working from a very different angle. Baru, for folks who don't know, is an accountant, and Terrain is definitely not an accountant. Terrain is I'm sure if you put a bunch of numbers in front of her that was not related to military strategy, and she would just blue screen a bit. But it did open my mind in terms of just, for one, it was nice to see that someone else was interested in this kind of fantasy reevaluating of colonialism in fantasy. But also colonialism in the real world. And also just seeing how he did it, Seth Dickinson, the author. And it was the thing that really, I don't even know if I should say this, but it's been a long time. I won't spoil it completely, but just when I got to the end, I was like, what the fuck? I'm gonna kill you, but also you can do that? Oh! And so even though I was dying inside, I was also like furiously taking notes. So yeah, it did change the game for me a bit for what's possible in terms of how you can make a reader feel. Another one that did that for me was the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. That one also made me understand anew how you could make a reader feel, like really feel.
Because that's so different, because it's second person, isn't it? It's like you are here, you are doing this, you are, which is very, I can't think of any other modern fantasy series that have done second person
for so long.
Yeah. It's just not been a tool that's been used. And exposes so much. Like I typically write third person, and I wrote something first person a few years ago. I was like, okay, this is really different now. I'm suddenly finding things that I thought I knew I'd done, and now I'm don't know what the hell I'm doing. So yeah. Second person, that's really challenging. There again, if you push the boundaries, if you try something different, it's obviously paid off for Seth and N.K. Jemisin. Amazing. So let's talk about Fortune's Wake. So first of all, I know this isn't your first novel, but novella, but this is a novella. So how do you find it versus a full-length novel? Like, you plan a novel over months, and then you sit down and write it over months. And novella's like, you've got a slice, you've got a window. Here's their life, here's the adventure. You've got this. So how did you find the challenge of compressing everything into like a moment or a few days?
I think that part is actually the fun part, because you only have to say, okay, you get one adventure, and not even like necessarily a full adventure, but you get one particular Saleh. And so this is the one Saleh into the caves. Like there is one bad guy that we think we know, we are going to chase it into one place. And I think that's on, like, scope is the big difference, is and with a short story as well. So a short story is a moment, and maybe a novella is a day.
Yeah.
And then the novel is longer than that, and then the full epic 10-book series is like a lifetime of trouble. But the best thing about them, I think, is that because of the writing schedule, at least where I am in terms of traditional publishing and the gaps in between my main novels, there's a certain window when an editor has your book and you can't do anything, and a novella is perfect for that, because the editor might have your bigger book for, let's just say 3 months as a ballpark. I can come up with an idea for the novella and then write the entire thing and then let it cool by the time the edits for the other book come back, and then send it off again. And I can do as many kinds of rounds of that as I want. And so that's the thing I love about them the most, and partly why I actually started writing them was because I didn't have time to really start a full new novel project in that gap. But I do tell stories for fun, and I also tell them for profit, I guess. So for fun and profit. So having something that I knew I could shop around, or maybe like put up on a newsletter or something, I knew that that's just kind of the fun of it. And so then it just so happened that for this one in particular, Grimdark Magazine came and asked if I would be interested in pitching around the time when I had a little bit of a dead zone in between projects and was already playing with some ideas. And then there it was.
So this is a brand new world. It's not connected to any of the other novels. Was that freeing, or was that kind of scary, like the blank page? You're like, yeah, I can do whatever I want, but also, wait, I have to like build everything now from scratch.
It was freeing in a way. I've actually really been enjoying starting new worlds, which is kind of a problem, because then I'm like, okay, well, now I need a book to go with each world. And one of the fun things about it is actually just not having any holdovers from other characters or other worlds' expectations or anything. And this one in particular is actually pretty, like, I've stripped it back a fair amount to a more basic fantasy realm, so that I can then build back up in some other interesting ways. And part of it is because of the base inspiration for it, which was the TTRPG, solo RPG Ironsworn, which is a pretty grimdark, low fantasy kind of world. And then I just started adding little pieces of my own interest. So inventing cities of my own, or peoples of my own. And I added some more monsters, which was really exciting. And I think that's one of the things that I really am enjoying, especially after the Unbroken trilogy, which was pretty, like, it's not our world, but I was keeping it pretty close to our world. So I didn't invent weird animals or creatures or monsters. But now I'm inventing some weird stuff, and I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Back to the fantastic. Yeah, really. Yeah. Just whatever you want. So tell me about the world. Tell me about some of the monsters. How far out did you go in terms of like the fantastic?
So this one is a bit closer to horror than I usually stray. So we've got a lot of necromantic kind of goodies. And those are a bit more basic, but my favorite thing that I did, which is, it's not really a spoiler, it's just really gross, is imagine chum, like shark chum that you feed to sharks. So all the different pieces of like seal chunks and fish and all of that stuff, other sharks, and then make it into a giant body. And so there's like a chum chimera that is walking around, and it's really big, and it's got like shark teeth for claws, and I don't know, like seal eyes, or just think of the grossest combination of rotting sea creature bodies and start piloting it around. That's the sea chimera.
One of my favorites from like the old D&D games was the gelatinous cube, just like this huge cube of goo that wanders around. I was always like, what is that? Someone just got bored. They're like, dragon, ogre. They eat some jello and they go, ooh, a gelatinous cube. I'm like, come on. You didn't even try, did you, dude? Cube. It's kind of kiwi flavored.
And yet, I've never actually, none of my D&D characters have ever tried to eat one. So I'm going to try that next time and see what happens.
See what flavor it is. Like kiwi, is it apple? Is it, pear? Who knows?
Kiwi watermelon sounds great.
Oh, yeah. Now I want some jelly. So given that this is, like you said, it's just like one moment or one part of the character's life, have you written a whole bunch of other stuff just for you to help you build it, or did you just kind of imagine it? Is it like on paper somewhere, or is it just all in your head?
So because this was inspired by the RPG, I did actually play through it. I played through this entire game as an outline. That was how I outlined the book. And then the transition from gameplay to novella is where we got some of the deeper character moments, and there ended up being a lot of different adjustments as far as background story, things that I did not play out. Like there's a particular scene between Kova and her mother that was not part of the gameplay, for example. But in my head, there are further adventures. There's like a past adventure where Kova actually goes to find Sayre. So when the book opens, she has already found this elite monster slayer and asked to be her apprentice. And so in my head, I know the little mini adventure that led her to this slayer who is not interested whatsoever. And then there are future adventures that they go on together, things that she teaches Kova. I think I also know how Kova ends, how like what the end game is for her. But none of that is on paper. That's all in my head for now.
Okay. Because I'm sure I heard you say like she's a grizzled slayer who made a promise, and this is like her, but when she's the apprentice. So could you like flash forward 20 years when she's not the apprentice to like she's a middle-aged woman and write that story, and then go another 20 years and write that story?
I'm not saying that's not in the plan. I'm not saying that's not going to happen. I'm not saying, but I do think I could get away with a few more novellas, because I'd be interested in exploring, because as we learn in the first novella, like and in the first chapter of the novella, there's some tension between the apprentice and the slayer, and I would like to see how that relationship grows as they're stuck in proximity, and see, hey, maybe one of them's just going to get totally fed up and kill the other one. I don't know. But yeah, I'm interested in that relationship, and I'm interested in, that flash forward 20 years, 40 years. Maybe Kova gets her own apprentice.
See, this is always the thing. Like there's so many stories about the young boy or girl growing up who becomes the hero, and they're usually mentored. But then it's like, what if they're in the other position? How looking back at the young kid comes to them, you're suddenly like, oh
God, I must have been a pain.
Like asking all these questions, they're like, wait, that was me. Oh no. Yeah. And with age comes wisdom, but also hindsight. You remembered what you were like when you were their age, like, oh, for God's sake. Yeah. So although there's quite a lot between Kova and her relationship with her mother, and you're very interested in motherhood as part of the story and as the theme, can you talk a bit about that and how Kova's difficult relationship with the mother?
Yeah, I think that I have a tendency to write about bad moms because I'm really interested just in the stereotypical expectations we have on women, period. But especially mothers, partly because I have no interest in being a mother, but my siblings have nieces, and my nieces and nephews. And so I am in a caretaker position of these children sometimes. And so there's that aspect that I'm really interested in, as well as the fact that I'm aware I am not doing what is expected of me in terms of necessary womanhood and stuff. And so there is a rupture, as well as seeing how the different women in my lives have dealt with that expectation. Sometimes better, sometimes worse. There's because it is the expectation that you will suborn your desires for someone else permanently, whereas that's not necessarily the expectation for fatherhood and or men and adult men in general. And so I am interested a bit in that, and like what a woman, especially a mother, does with that desire that she had for her own individual life when she's not able to give it up for a child, or unwilling to give it up for a child. And also in my other books, I also explore like societies where it's not expected that she give up everything, or where, as in the Unbroken, like the child is taken, so she doesn't actually even get to grapple with that and has a different thing to deal with. And counter to that, I think, is also it's not parenthood exactly, but there's a certain mentorship in the queer community that I benefited from. There was an older queer woman when I was a teen who kind of showed me the ropes of queerness, because it's I would almost say it's a different kind of motherhood, but not really motherhood. It's like a guiding. Well, it's a mentorship. It's a mentorship, yeah. But it's still parental in certain ways, doing the same things. Like, these are the dangers. These are the right ways to go about life, and serving a very similar purpose, but on a different path. And so those were two, not opposing, but like diverging branches of role modeling that happen in this book. And Kova has to navigate her own path as she looks at these two different women. And now that I think about it, that actually is a lot of my books.
Well, she's got the two aspects, as you say, because her mother, who's literally had her as a child, and as you know, and then you have the totally non-traditional path, even within that society, of going out and becoming a monster slayer. And like, who doesn't want to go and do that and be cool and rich and famous and have all that kind of stuff? And like this reality of any situation, being a mother, being a slayer of some kind, versus what you think it is as expectations, as you said, the teen. And then if you write the story at the end, looking back, you'd be like, yeah, it really wasn't what I thought it was. The differences. Yeah. So I'm a little bit older than you, but I know that you're a few years younger than me. But do you think you could have written this kind of mentor role as well as you could now, as if you could have, say, when you were like in your early 20s? Do you think you needed that age, the wisdom to do it?
Oh, I definitely think I did. Like, because I had good mentors, and so I could certainly have written about those relationships. And I did write a bit about conflicted mentor relationships in The Magic of the Lost, but even then, I was in my mid to late 20s when I started it. And no, I guess I would have been early-ish 20s when I started it. But by the time I finished it, before it went to publication, I was already 30. So I think it did benefit from a little extra seasoning of myself, of my experience. But for me, that's all writing. I think all of my writing is better for being older. But also, I have since taught and been a mentor myself in various capacities, and in creative writing, mentorships and teaching, and in classrooms, and also as an older queer figure. I wouldn't give myself quite airs and say that I'm a queer elder, but I definitely have queers who are younger than
You're not gray enough yet to be an elder.
Exactly. But I certainly have had conversations with young queer kids about, the right way to go on, and things that they might think about as they're getting older and they're making some of these choices. And so I have had these opportunities, and I've also watched them absolutely ignore me. And I'm like, all right, well, Godspeed, kids. Have fun. I'll be here when you get back, because if they're smart, what your mentees will always come back. That's what I like to tell myself. I don't know if it's true. In some cases, I'm still waiting, but I think that's just one of the things that you have to hope for, that they'll either fly or they will come back until they can fly again.
Yeah. Youth is wasted on the young sometimes, I think. I think they'll either do it the hard way and learn the lessons you're trying to tell them, or they'll listen. But like, I just want to find out for myself. And you're like, okay.
Sometimes you need to find out for yourself. And I think that's
part of living.
That's what Kova is doing. That is definitely what Kova is doing.
Yeah. The other thing I kind of want to talk about with the parents and stuff is like when we're kids, and myself, I looked at my parents and I thought, one, they know everything. Two, they're invincible. Three, they're going to live forever. And it's not until you get to a certain age you realize, oh wait, they're also people, and they have flaws, and they're trying to do things for themselves, not just for you. And so is Kova kind of looking at her mum in a new way as well, thinking that, hey, wait, she's not just a mum? Because change from when you're young to when you're like, I don't know, 30, it's quite severe. But from like 30 to 40, 40 to 50, there isn't as much changes from the outside, but for the inside, you see it a lot more. So I'm always interested in that part of aging.
I think the interesting thing about Kova, and maybe this happens with a lot of people as they go from teens and young 20s to their like older decades, always looking at their parents. Like, I think when you're a little kid, you're like, yeah, that's my hero. That's my mom. That's my dad. And then when you're like a teenager, you're like, oh, fuck you, man. You suck. You don't get anything. You don't know my life.
You're never my age.
Exactly. Exactly. You don't know how it is for us. So then they go through that phase. And then I think the really interesting part is when they stop hating, but also stop idolizing. And that interesting bit that is both, I see that you are flawed, but I also can see the ways you in particular have been fucked over, and how you're trying to either fix it or navigate it, or all the things that you have done for me, despite all that it has cost you. And I think that there's a particular growing moment, because this isn't always the case. And I don't actually know how Kova feels at this precise moment. I think that she's got some more thinking to do, processing. But if she thinks that her mother has made sacrifices for her or not, there's a particular thing that can happen if they see these are the sacrifices this person has made for me. And if they start to feel grateful for it or resent it or what, I think that's a big character moment for an adult child.
Yeah. Realization of what they may have given up for you to get to where you are, for everything that you have in that moment. And it's that thing of, well, she wants to not necessarily throw it away, but do something completely different and very dangerous and go off and be a monster slayer. And it's like, I think that's a great idea. But there again, kids are not going to listen, are they?
Yeah. And I mean, is that more dangerous than being a crab fisher? Who can say? It may not be more or less dangerous, just maybe less familiar. And there is that thing that's like, parents do prefer sometimes the familiar. And so Kova will get to think about that a bit.
So is there an aspect of when you're writing this book or books that you kind of obsess more on in the writing process than others? Like, is it the prose? Is it the dialogue? Is it the characters? Like, I know some people they're constantly fiddling with the words, and I'm like, my prose is workmanlike. It's there to do the job. I'm more interested in characters. I'm more interested in emotions. I'm more interested in like world building, realistic dialogue. The prose for me, it's like, it's just there to tell a story.
Unfortunately, I love it all. I love it all. Which means the writing process, if I had my way, it would take forever. Because, like, let's say it takes me a couple full drafts to get the story itself done. Then I would ideally like to do a full character pass, and then a full world building pass, and then a full prose pass. and I don't always have time for that. So this actually had, I keep looking, if you see me looking into the corners, because my stack of books is here and they're so pretty, but I had more time because it's shorter. So
yes.
My other novella, similarly, Fate's Bane, which I also have stacked here, is it's really small, but because of that, I got to spend all the time I wanted on the prose. And if you read that and compare it to, say, the Magic of the Lost trilogy, there's much more of a prose flourish than in the big, like 150,000 word books. So I do love to play with prose. I like reading poetry. It's a big part of my just my general literary life. But if I had to say what is the most important part, I would say the character, because I don't read anything if I don't care about the character situation. I don't care how pretty it is. If I don't feel anything, then I will be bored. And same goes for world building. Like, I'm not interested as much in a world if I don't care about the characters who live in it. If I don't care about how this awesome, like, world building doohickey impacts another character. If I don't care, then I don't care.
It's the emotions, it's the people, it's the places sometimes, but there again, unless the city is a character, it's it's New York or it's whatever city you've made up. It's there to tell. It's not there to tell the story. It's there to be part of the story for me. That's how I kind of view it. It's just the deadline though. This is the thing. Being a traditionally published author, as you know, the deadline is king, and you cannot escape it.
Yeah. I do like I like a really robust world as well. And I like to build the world up such that nothing could happen, nothing that happens in that city, for example, could happen in any other city. And so I want the reader to be able to imagine they're walking down a street and they can see a certain character. If they turn the street, like, I know what will be here. I know who will be here. That's kind of the aim I have with the world building. As long as it is that robust and you can imagine everything else below the surface, then I'll feel good.
Yeah, it's that thing of, if you as the writer decide to turn left instead of right, there's not just like an empty space and you're like, when I mentor people and I'm teaching them writing stuff, one of my things is, I don't think writer's block exists in the way that people think it exists. I think it's a lack of preparation for that exact thing. You turn left instead of right because you suddenly had a cool idea or something's come up in the moment, and you go, and they just stop. Like the clock stops because you go, oh. I mean, and if you see the pants writer, that's usually okay because you bluff it, because you're all bluffing it until it coalesces. But if you're a planner and you haven't done it, you're stuffed.
That's exactly it. So when I tell people who ask for advice about writer's block, I say writer's block is usually you don't know enough. That's what it is. So you need to figure out what it is you don't know. And sometimes it's a world building thing. Like, you don't know what's on this street. You don't know how the economy works. You don't know about the political relationships or how the magic works. Or it's a character thing. Like, you don't know how long these guys dated, so you don't know why they're not talking to each other, and so you can't figure out what happens next. You don't know where her mom is, or and so you either make that part of the story or you just take some time and figure it out. And so usually whenever I have writer's block, I'm like, okay, well, the day's task is no longer write 500 words. It's go back to the notebook, do some exercises, like jot out world building card or like world building notes, or do character exercises, something like that, until those gaps start to fill in again.
So are you always writing even when you're not writing? Like, you're going for a walk or someone's talking to you, like, did you hear what I said? And you're like, yes, dear, I was totally listening to you.
That never happens to me.
It happens to me
ever.
either. Yeah, I get a lot of, you weren't listening, were you?
I tend to have a pretty zoned out face. So if my partner is trying to say something and I'm just like, she'll just see and she'll be like,
know you're
"Oh,
elsewhere. You're just
you're writing, aren't you?" I'm like, "Yeah." So we have an arrangement. Like she's aware. So
yeah, mine's the same. Like if I'm tuned out, I get a little bit of grace, enough to like come back and do it later. I also think that when you're just doing something that completely stops you from thinking, like working out, going for a walk, driving, where you're just focused on the thing that you're doing, your brain's decompiling and working stuff out in the background. And like sometimes then when I sit down, I start writing, it's like, oh, it's not come by magic. It's my brain's been ticking the thing that's been bugging me over in the back of my brain for like days. And then I sit down and go, but it's not just literally just sitting staring at the keyboard going, because that doesn't work.
Yeah, definitely not. I actually, now that I don't drive here in London, I miss long road trips in the States because I would write a lot during those drives. And I mean, I walk around a lot here, but when you're walking, you have to do a lot more small navigations and stuff. And so it interrupts the flow a bit more than if I'm just like for like, 4 or 5 hours or whatever.
Yeah, you drive 4 or 5 hours over here. You've got to the end of the country. It's not like in America. It's days. Hours. Like, I'm back in Scotland now. Okay, I go back down again. So one thing because the novella touches on it as well, is leaving a place and coming back and finding it different from how it was when you. In this case, a lot more drastic. However, but I also think that's part of the thing to do with growing up, going back home, and can you ever really go home? Was that a theme that was always there, or did that just come out as part of the process of writing this?
Yeah, I think that came out as the process of it because, like I mentioned in another video, it was definitely from the beginning. I knew this is about this girl who wanted to leave home, tried to leave home, and then ended up coming back. But for starters, that was not the original intent. I was just like, okay, let's have an adventure. Where is she going to adventure at? And then the idea for the monsters to be at home sort of came to pass. But then the idea that home would be such a fraught place for her, that didn't really fully take shape until I had the whole scope of everything. So after I'd essentially played through or outlined the entire novella, and then I was like, well, duh, Sheree, this is obviously where it was going the entire time. So
have you always been a planner then, like of your stories? Have you ever tried writing just?
Yes. To my great detriment. I mean, so I think, and I don't know how a lot of people start their very first novels, and maybe you can tell me about your experience, but The Unbroken was the first novel I finished with the intent to actually try and get something published. Like it was not, I had written NaNoWriMo novel stuff before, but I was just like, okay, let's finish a novel. And that was, all of those were very pantsed kind of, all right, we're just gonna shoot through November. And when I sat down to do The Unbroken, I think maybe I had a little bit of an outline, and that was just like that. Do you remember those books that were 20 master plots and how to use them or something like that? Right. So I had one of those, and I thought, oh, okay, well, I'll pick this master plot. And then those master plots are only like 5 points. So obviously there's so much more to fill in. And so I just wrote, and then I had a hot mess that I then spent almost a decade rewriting over and over again.
Wow.
And so after I did that, I like the end of that decade was selling it and then realizing I had to do that again, but this time with a 1-year deadline. And that I couldn't do that again. I didn't have time to repeatedly mess up that story. So that was when I was really like, we're going to need to do something different here. So I started trying to find out different outlining strategies. There were a few that I tried on. The one that resonated with me the most was from Story Engineering by Larry Brooks, because, and this is like massive caveat, because everyone is, when they're talking at least about Western story structure, almost everyone is talking about the exact same thing, but they call it different things, or they put the lines in different places.
Right.
But the place where he put the lines made more sense to me than anybody else. And so instead of dividing it into 3 parts or talking about 7 points, he said the book is divided into 4 quarters. And I was like, these quarters make more sense to me than anything else. And so that helped me. Actually, I think I found that towards the end of the Unbroken, because I remember checking it and being like, oh, this actually does kind of work out to be these 4 quarters. And all 3 of the books in that trilogy are broken into 4 different parts. So you can actually see, if you wanted to, how I was mentally structuring that and turn that also into the actual package of the book. And so I became an outliner from basically that point on. And then, so that was the 3 novels of the trilogy. The novella Fate's Bane was also a very quick beat sheet kind of thing. And then the IP novel, the Ambessa novel, which had to be outlined to hell because it was IP and everything had to get approved. And by the time all of that was over, I was so burned out on outlines that I looked at this outline I had written for the standalone that I had sold but hadn't started yet, and I just balled it up and threw it in the trash. And I started just playing with the world building again, just playing with the story engine world cards that I had and just making a brand new map, just like, oh, how about this? This looks fun. This looks fun. Completely unoutlined. I knew the one big thing that happened at the end, and I knew the one big thing or medium thing that happened to start off the book, and everything else was just, well, I built this really cool map, so I guess we're just going to go to the places that are on the map. And I did, and that was how I wrote that book, essentially. And granted, I think there are 2 storylines. It's a present and a past storyline. The past storyline is super great. The present day storyline was shit. So my success rate for the pantsing is 50-50. But I had much more fun writing it.
Yeah, I think the other thing I tell people is, like, getting that first book published is a massive challenge. If you go traditional route, getting a literary agent, getting your book deal, getting all of that. I actually think the second book is more challenging, not necessarily because you have to write a whole new, brand new book. It's that thing, like you said, of suddenly, right, you've done all of that, all the thinking, all the walking around, all the long walks, all the long drives. Okay, now you have to do all of that again, but do it in 9 months or 10 months so that the book can come out in a year. Now do it again. Now do it again. And like, it's that thing of, but they need to know. You can't be like, here's the trilogy, here's the first book, what's 2 and 3? I'll tell you later. They're like, if we're buying this, we need a little bit more. And there again, you have to lay down some track, even if it's not a lot. So my first trilogy was with Orbit. So I gave them the first manuscript. I gave them 2 pages for book 2, and I gave them 4 lines for book 3. That was it. Yeah. And they were like, cool, we'll work on 1. And then once 1 got to a certain point, they're like, where are we with 2? And then, where are we? Well, they don't care until you get to a certain point. But so you've got to be constantly thinking ahead. So I think the second one is more difficult.
I thought that as well. And it's also difficult because, especially with a trilogy, you've got a very particular set of challenges that are linking the 2 books. So that is another reason I am really into novellas at the moment because there's no soggy middle with a novella that stands by itself.
Yeah. It's the freedom, like you said, and indie publishing is so different from what it used to be. I've done a couple of self-published indie novellas for the same reason as you. I just feel like I want to play, I want to see where we go, see what happens, and it's that freedom of in between the contract novels. Let's play. Not that writing isn't fun, and not that writing novels is something I'd love to do, and I'll do it every day I can. But I don't believe that the line where people say if it's a job that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I'm like, dude, writing is still work. I'm not doing open heart surgery. I'm not cleaning out the drains, but I'm still working. I'm still doing a job that's challenging mentally. So,
yeah, there is some. I think even if I like take working out, like I love to work out, but some days are really hard, and there's a reason I like a little active recovery day, or a day where they say, oh, instead of running 15 miles, you only have to run 3. And like, oh, yes. So there are definitely levels of challenge to it, for sure.
Cheat days are good. Yeah. You're like, I don't want to have the creatine and the thing. I'm just going to skip.
Oh, my creatine every day. It's right in here. What?
I had mine this morning. I do the other stuff as and when. Yeah. It's that thing of, once you become traditionally published, usually they want you to produce a certain work at a certain volume. But the market has changed a lot now, that I think there are so many more opportunities for authors to do indie projects, to do novellas, to do other things that keep you refreshed at the same time as doing your main contract novels. Is this something you want to do kind of more of going forward, to keep you flexible and sort of, a bit looser?
I like it, but for me, it's if I'm writing a story that I'm enjoying, it's really, I mean, not to say that the novels, as we said, they're not a story that I'm not enjoying, but if I'm writing a novel that I'm enjoying and I'm fully engaged in, that's cool. And as I said, most of the time when I'm starting one of these other projects, it's in that interstitial time.
Yeah.
But then we get moments like this where, everything stacks and everything's coming out at the same time. And so then you have to kind of split your attention. But the thing I just love the most is just telling myself stories. And so sometimes that happens on the weekend, and the story that I'm telling myself in between, or just like the day after I've done my daily writing for the contract novel, then the day after I'm just like, ooh, wouldn't this be really cool? And then I write a short story all of a sudden. Or like, I mean, I'll be honest, this past weekend, I was supposed to be just chilling, maybe taking notes for a D&D character, which is another kind of storytelling that I enjoy for fun. But then I was like, oh, the second novella, what could happen? And so I started jotting down notes for like a Monster Slayer #2, just like seeing what that outline would look like, what could happen in this. And it's just, I'm not working on it because I have this contract novella to do, but just the act of freeing myself to play and go into a different zone is freedom enough that my brain doesn't feel rebellious, which sometimes, it's like it can be like a stubborn teenager, like, well, you want me to do this, so I'm not going to do it. So if you remind it that all of this is fun, the novel is fun, the short story is fun, the novella is fun, all of it is playtime, then I also go into the novel with a much more playful attitude as well. So
yeah, I think you're right. I think it's stretching different muscles and just keeping it fun so that you can keep doing it longer and you don't burn out as much, because there's different opportunities now. So I think that's really, really good. And it's the smaller commitment as well. You spend months and months and months working on something, and you don't want to go straight into another novel sometimes and just that's full on again. Yeah. It's a big ask. So
it's like training for a marathon and then training for another marathon. Sometimes you want to do like a 25K fun runs, You want to work on speed instead of distance.
Yeah. I've done I've done squats. Tomorrow I'm doing chest. That's it. Like, I'm not doing the same thing again and again. It's just you don't want to just keep hammering the same muscles. It's not worth it. So anyway, enough training talk. So Fortune's Wake is out today. Everybody go and check it out. It's from Grimdark Magazine. It's the first of maybe more stories with Covert. Who can say?
Who knows? Who
knows? They may come along in the future. So keep an eye out.
Yeah. If you buy this book and tell your friends, there's a possibility that we could have a few more. Who knows?
Flash forwards we could have her as the grizzled demon monster slayer, maybe. Who knows? With their own annoying apprentice of her own to tell her how life is really. So yeah, what more could you ask for? So thanks for joining us tonight, everybody. Check out, there's links down below, and we'll see you soon in the future. Good night, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Good night.